Hello there, bookfighters, and I am back home. My room, there is my bookshelf. And I'm at that most wonderful of times now where I am home and I can do what I want to do and I have the summer ahead of me and I don't have to do any more work and I've finished all my exams and it's all very exciting. We received a video response from YouTube username The Missing N and YouTube actual name Alexander.
Hello people, and hello Dan, Lauren, Katie, Kalinda, Julia and Sarah.
Hello Alexander.
My problem lies with the name itself. Young adult. What does that mean? But what does it mean for a book to be young adult fiction? Well, the simple answer is it needs to be targeted to young adults. But, as I said, I don't know much about it, but I have come to understand that this includes everything from Artemis Fowl to The Catcher in the Rye. These are very different books. My point is that young adult is too vague a term and that it spans too many genres to be one genre of its own. So in my opinion, I don't think young adult is as much a genre as it is a target audience.
So young adult seems to be this term that our generation has coined, and we have coined this term and then we have gone back through history and had a look at every book ever to see whether or not it fits under this umbrella. And in that way it very much is like a genre. If we look at something like the Gothic genre tradition, a lot of people say that the first Gothic novel was The Castle of Otranto by Horace Walpole, and that might very well be true, but it's only true because when we decided that the Gothic genre was gonna be a thing, we went through history, we did the same thing, we catalogued every book ever, and whilst Castle of Otranto wasn't the first book to go under that umbrella, when they were all under the umbrella, that was the one that was written the earliest, and so that was the start of the genre, which, does that feel weird? Does that seem odd? Before that, The Castle of Otranto would have been considered a romantic novel, and it really does fit very well into the romantic tradition, and if we hadn't decided that we're going to categorize a group of books based on what architecture they contain, it might very well have stayed there. Even just 20 years ago you had like kids books or books for adult, and that line might have been a bit blurred 20 years ago, but the further you go back, the less blurred that line is, the straighter and more defined it becomes. Even to the extent where you had people like Mark Twain and books like Huckleberry Finn, which, you know, if you've read that book, you know it's not really a kid's book in the sense that we would call kids book today, but nevertheless, that's the book that kids would read because the protagonist was a kid, and that's how people categorized their books back then. It's weird. And it's the same story with The Catcher in the Rye, and to that tradition, both me and The Missing N say
these are very different books.
But I want to go further on this because there's something else that The Missing N says which I'm intrigued by. He says
sci-fi and fantasy are already two different genres, and I like one and not the other.
Now I don't know which one of these he likes or he doesn't. I'm going to go ahead and assume that he likes fantasy and not sci-fi. But when you look at these two genres, they have a myriad of genres in and of themselves. Like sci-fi, is that just to do with space and like space exploration? Or is it to do with any scientific concept explored to the nth degree? Like something like Dollhouse wouldn't be sci-fi if it was just to do with space. And fantasy, does that have to contain magic? And is high fantasy like Lord of the Rings the same as fantasy like Harry Potter, where it's got like wizards and witches but it doesn't have the old kind of medieval English feel that we associate fantasy with? I feel like we've all been saying the same thing without actually saying the same thing, and I think Katie said it best in her video last week where she said,
"You're really selling yourself short by not reading books just because they're marketed towards a different demographic, because that has nothing to do with the literature and everything to do with the bookstores making money."
The fact is, YA is a genre. It's just a strange one because it means something different to what it actually says, and what it means is exactly what the bookstores tell us it means. They are books that you read when you're not clever enough to read big boy books, and that explanation is as redundant, I think, as any of the genre explanations. So I say let's tear down the casts of genre and let's stop looking at books as if they belong to gangs of other books and they get together and talk to each other on the shelf because they have similar interests. And you know what, I say fuck this, stop ordering our bookshelves, let's mix our bookshelves up and let them find commonality in their differences rather than in their spines. And when you've done that, pick two at random and I bet you will find a myriad of similarities and differences, even though the bookstore didn't tell you that they were there. So in conclusion, thank you, The Missing N, for making us a video response. Fuck genre, and Lauren, I'll see you tomorrow.